should be all right. There we go. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, on the 12th of December 1955, a long time ago, I arrived here at Pease Air Force Base and started searching for a church for my family, and we were unable to find nothing in this area as far as a Lutheran is concerned. We found a Lutheran church in Concord, one in Peabody, and I believe one in Portland. That was the closest. So we started attending a few of the other churches around. Didn't feel real well received. So I happened to run into a young fellow out at the base, and in talking with, I found he was a Lutheran. And so we wrote a letter off to Minnesota, and they sent a letter back to us that they were sending a young fella from there that wasn't ordained. So we met with him and we started doing some research. He researched the civilian population, and we started going through the card files at the air base as people was coming in. I like to note it was a little bit difficult because people didn't come in and put down Lutheran, they put down Protestant. And so then we had to start figuring out, well, where does the majority of Lutherans come from? So we thought of Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. And we started doing some calling, individual calling to the Protestants, and found out that there was, considerable amount of Lutherans. While we were doing our research at the chapel, there was a gentleman that walked in, happened to be a Lutheran chaplain. And so after he was done talking with the base chaplain, which is a Catholic chaplain, we approached him, and within a couple of weeks we were holding a service at the air base. And after 4 or 5 different services there, we decided we weren't making much headway because people didn't seem to want to come from, outside of the base on the base to go to services. So we made contact with the Middle Street Baptist Church down in Portsmouth, and they had a little chapel, and they allowed us to use that, and with no cost, no nothing. It was very gracious. And then is when we started growing, really. I believe if I remember correctly, I believe the first service there was 11 people. At the base chapel, I don't think we ever got over 7. But then the second service was like 17. It grew every Sunday. And I believe that's where Marie comes in with her part, because it was her father that was the strong force in organizing a group of people to really start Holy Trinity Lutheran Church. Thank you.
We have a lot of people that were working to see that there be a Lutheran church in this area, and among them was Dr. and Mrs. Hillman Johnson, they were from Dover. Dr. Johnson was a chiropractor, and his wife Ella was a registered nurse. And like I said, they were instrumental in seeing that there be a Lutheran church in this area. Dr. Johnson kept a book. I have it here, and someday I want to sit down and read it, but I was just looking at it again today. And he says the average attendance during the first 6 months was about 25. Holy Communion has been celebrated the first Sunday of most months. And then he concludes his little article here with, it is with great joy that we look forward to the coming of the first permanent pastor, the Reverend Monet. May the Lord continue to add his blessings to our humble efforts. Dr. Johnson was afflicted with cancer, and he lived to see the church become a reality. He lived to see the groundbreaking, and he lived to see the church going up. But unfortunately, he passed away about 2 touches on the building, and therefore his funeral was held in his home in Dover. Mrs. Johnson continued on working just as hard as ever, doing different things, loving the Holy Trinity as much as her husband did, and she eventually passed away. But they are certainly a part of the history of this church. I want to tell you how my family found out that there was to be a Lutheran church in the area. In January 1957, we were in Newport, Rhode Island, at St. Peter's Lutheran Church to attend my grandmother's funeral. And my dad and my mother got into quite a conversation with the then pastor of St. Peter's, Dr. Albee. He explained to him that both he and my mother had been confirmed at St. Peter's, that they were Lutheran, and we were baptized Lutheran, but there was no Lutheran church in the area. Pastor Albee smiled. He said, "I guess you haven't heard there's to be a Lutheran church in the Portsmouth area." And so then he asked my parents for permission to send our family's name into the synod headquarters in Boston. And Dad said, "By all means do." And it was just a week or so later that we started getting notices about different events taking place in church services and everything. And then in May came a nice notice that our board missionary, Dr. May, would be arriving in June and preaching his first service at Mill Street Baptist Church. And we were right down there that Sunday, the entire family. And I always remember Dr. May, when he gave the announcement, said that immediately following the services, I will be meeting with members of the steering committee and anyone else who is interested. And my dad was among the several interested people. And from there on, things just started coming. Dr. May was a good person for this job because he pushed a little bit. Some people didn't like it, but he had to push to get things done. And he was a real dedicated person. About a week later, he had talked to the school authorities in Portsmouth and made arrangements for us to use the Wentworth Davis School in Portsmouth. We used the auditorium for church services. We had the use of the classrooms for Sunday school. And we even had the use of their little kitchen, and the ladies put on a few potluck dinners, which were very good. And that's where we got our start. That's where we held our services. Dr. May, let me back up a minute. Dr. May came his first, we were having services in the Mill Street Baptist Church in Portsmouth. And that's where Dr. May preached. And then a week later, he got us moved into the Wentworth Davis School. We immediately named the church, we named it Holy Trinity. Then in early summer, the congregation was invited out to my parents' home in Barrington for a congregational meeting and a potluck dinner. And also present was Dr. LeMay and Pastor Ruben Mundine, who some of you perhaps know was our regional director. And as I refer to him on the anniversary services, our guardian angel, because he was there with suggestions and helping us out as much as he could. At this congregational meeting at my parents' home, they accomplished an awful lot. They appointed a site committee, which was made of my dad, John Blum, and Roy Hunnies. They drafted the Constitution and bylaws for the church. Various committees were appointed. And they also set the date for the rite of reception, that is the date that we were going to become a congregation. And the group chose October 27, 1957, because that was Affirmation Sunday. They voted on September 29th of 57. They voted after the site committee came back and reported. They voted to buy 3 acres of Novelski land. There we are, at a price of $3,000 per acre. The church could have first option on any further sale of any Novelski land. And then came October 27th, 1957, Reformation Sunday. It was a beautiful day. I know it's something I don't never forget. It was a busy Sunday. We had a couple of adult baptisms. We had the first adult confirmation class, and we had the rite of reception. And like I said, it was busy, but nice. And in the afternoon, the group reassembled at the Wentworth Davis School for a potluck dinner. You may have noticed out in the kitchen that there are 2 lists of members. The reason being, one list contains the names of the people who were actually present here the day we became a church. That afternoon, the congregation voted to leave the membership roll open until the end of December 31st, 57. So that the second roll contains names of people who came in after we became a congregation, but before December 31st of 57. And they are hanging on the wall out there. We have, like I said, there were so many nice people building a church and wanting so much to have a Lutheran church in the area, and they were going all out. And I love to tell the story about the purchasing of the organ, because it was truly an example of good stewardship. Shortly after we became a church, when they were still having services at the Newington school, a group of people were good talking. They said, you know, the piano sounds good, but an organ would sound so much better. And somehow or other, my father got appointed to the chairman of the committee, and he approached Dr. LeMay, and he told him what the group had in mind, that they wanted to buy an organ. And Dr. LeMay said, "Oh, that's fine." He said, "There's nothing better. I'd like you to have an organ in place of the piano." They said, "You know, you people can't afford that." And he said, "Well, I'll go back and report what you said, but we'll see what we can do." And the group wasn't about to take no for an answer. They held another meeting. In 10 weeks' time, this group voted to pledge enough money. We had, Holy Trinity had an organ. We had the organ before we had broken ground, come in here and started building. And so Dr. May was pleased. He was pleased not only with the organ, but pleased with what the group did in getting this organ. And he had spoken to Dr. Castellandine, our regional director, and told him what they wanted to do, and he put a no on it right away. He said, "They can't afford it. They carry big pledges, and you better just put that on the back burner for a while." So when after this became a reality, Dr. Lene couldn't wait to tell Castellandine, and teased him for a while and told him that we had an organ. And Castellandine almost went through the floor. He said, "How are you going to pay for it?" "No, you know, I told you not to do it." But he was a little bit relieved when he found out that the organ was all bought and paid for. Mr. Fulford, who owned the organ place in Portsmouth, was very nice. He sold the organ at cost. But there were 10 people who were under heavy pledges then and pledged a little bit more so that Holy Trinity could have an organ. So like I said, we had the organ before we broke ground to come here.
Do you remember how much that cost, the organ? Just out of curiosity.
This isn't the organ. It was the first. This is the second organ.
Yeah.
The first one was there. I have it in the notes. I think I have it in the. Was it 11? Was it 10 or 11? No.
10,000?
About that. He sold it to the church at cost, but 10 weeks time, people had pledged enough to buy the organ. So like, there's a will, there's a way. But I love to tell that story because these were the kind of people that we had that were building the church, that cared about the church. And it was truly remarkable. Later on, at a church meeting, the church name was changed. It was changed from Holy Trinity Lutheran Church to Holy Trinity Evangelical Lutheran Church. And in the fall of 1958, on a very rainy Sunday afternoon, we had the groundbreaking for our church. Now this land, there were no malls around here, and this land was used by the Novalskis to graze their cattle. And we had to watch where we stepped, if you know what I mean. The password was, "Watch your step." But there was a barbed wire fence going right across the driveway there, where our driveway is now, and they had to break back so we could come in. And it was raining. I have pictures I'm going to show you later, and I'll show you exactly how rainy it was that afternoon. It was soaking wet. We were all soaking wet, but it was for a good reason. And then in June 1958, June 14th, to be exact, no, June 1959, our building, the first unit, was dedicated. And at that time, we were honored with the presence of the then governor of the state, the Honorable Wes Powell. He came and he took part in the service and he spoke, and it just made our little group feel so good to think that the governor of the state would take his time to come here and wish us well. In 1962, we started growing, and we added on the first unit. And in 1980, still growing, Holy Trinity was expanded and renovated. The many renovations included the installation of a 250 square foot solid wall. And then we were very busy. June 1972, our church hosted the summer meeting of the New England Synod at the 105C. That was quite a thing, and we were proud that we could do it. this church sponsored a Vietnamese family, and we were the first church in the area to do this. We got an apartment for them to live in. We furnished it with furniture, with clothing, and we even furnished the pantry. And I remember that I was serving on the pantry committee with Jean Klein, and we went out to all the big supermarkets and these shops, and we'd go to the refrigerator and the cupboards, and then last night we went down to Pebbles and we bought every vegetable you could think of, knowing that Vietnamese use a lot of vegetables in their cooking, and we thought we had covered everything. And when they finally arrived, Leslie Hammerhand, Pastor Hammerhand's wife, said to the mother, "Would you like to go shopping? Maybe there's something we've forgotten. Maybe you'd like to go, you tell me what store you want to go to." She wanted to go to the supermarket. We had forgot to buy pea pods. Of all the things, we didn't buy pea pods for the group. So we took, and she did a shopping, and she came home. The church later sponsored an Indonesian family. And it was the church all working together, community spirit. It was nice to see them. They all took quite an interest in it. It spoke well for the church. In 1979, we hosted another meeting of the New England Synod, and this time it was at the University of New Hampshire. October 1982, we observed our 25th anniversary. Dr. and Mrs. J. Whitlock, activists, chair people, for the many activities. And the activity started in the summer, and I remember we had a nice smorgasbord for the children up in the front lawn there, and that went over well. And then the weekend of our anniversary, we had a special church service, and it was climaxed with a banquet held that Sunday evening at the Pease Air Force Base. And at that time, we were honored again by the state of New Hampshire. The then Governor Hugh Gallen presented the church with a proclamation. March 1986, a white neon cross, more than 8 feet long and constructed of neon encased in redwood with an acrylic base, was added near the summit of the 30-foot arched gable facing the Spalding Turnpike that's out there to immediately identify the edifice as a place of Christian worship. In October 1987, we had another anniversary, our 30th, and this was a catered banquet at the town hall the Saturday evening closest to our anniversary date in Newington. And this was followed on the next day, on Sunday, with a special church service. Mary and Al Friedrich served as chairman of this anniversary service. Holy Trinity has had 3 parsonages. The first parsonage, picked by the steering committee, was bought in 1957. It was located on Lafayette Road in Portsmouth. And later it was decided that it would be more feasible to look for another parsonage which would be closer to the church. And the second parsonage which we bought was the Bernard residence, and that was located on the Dover Point Road in Dover. And still later, a third parsonage providing more room was built on Pearson Drive, not too far from the second parsonage in Dover, which is our present parsonage. We've had 6 pastors serve Holy Trinity since the departure of the board missionary. Pastor Snyder became our 6th pastor on September 24, 1989, at a very impressive installation service.
Okay, before you leave, Marie, tell me the most, in your judgment, the most significant moment in the history of the church from the time it was founded until this morning's service, from your perspective. What was the one event that kind of stands out in your mind as being extremely significant in the history of the church?
Well, I would have to say the day that we became a congregation, something I will never forget.
What was it? Who was there that day?
I have pictures of the congregation.
Was the bishop there that day?
The bishop was here, Pastor England, Pastor Levine, Chaplain Emerson, and Dr. Lemay, and they were all standing up in the back of the picture. This is how the congregation looked that day. And then I also have a picture of the confirmation class. It was an adult confirmation class. And I told you it rained that day, and when you look at this picture, you're going to understand the rain. And I'm going to circulate these things so that you can look at it.
Okay. Now, Harold, I'd like to ask you the same question. In your recollections, what would you say would be the most significant moment in the history of this congregation?
I don't know, I believe the most exciting thing to me was when we were getting organized in the Middle Street Baptist Church. The growth that happened in such a short period of time was very encouraging after the slow growth that we could not experience out at the chapel. We wondered if we were going the right direction, but then to get at the Middle Street Baptist Church, and in no time we outgrew the chapel. I would believe that would hold somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 people, and we had no room, I would say, within 3 months.
So that was, in your mind, kind of a confirmation of what we were doing and that this was the right thing to do.
You know, to see the growth so quick was really quite encouraging. And then how quick it grew again at the school over in Wentworth.
There's a story I remember you telling about when you were going through the cards and some big gentleman came in, and that was a moment that was...
Well,
you want to tell that story again?
Well, that was Pastor... Emerson. He was a Lutheran chaplain, and when he walked in, he's about 6'4", and he even looked bigger than that. We were going through the cards, and we heard him introduce himself to the base chaplain, and he said, "I'm a Lutheran," and the three of us just looked at each other and at him. Like I said, he was bigger than life, and he's the one that really helped us, get started at the Middle Street Baptist Church, and he got the people from the base to come too.
That must have been something of a confirmation too, that here's a group of Lutheran lay people get interested in starting a congregation, and all of a sudden there's a Lutheran chaplain on base that was there to help when you needed the help.
We most certainly felt as though it was an act of God.
Yeah.
Well, they sent Dr. LeMay here as the board missionary, and they couldn't have picked a better person. Do you agree? Because he was a worker, and he was turning up Lutherans out every place he went. He was turning them up,
And
finding them in the darkest places.
And Chaplain Emerson supported him all.
Yes, he did.
He was here, and then he left, and then he came back and attended Holy Trinity for quite a while. He had 5 daughters. It seemed at one time everybody that come here had daughters.
Yes.
Till the Snyders arrived. And wasn't it just this past summer that Dr. LeMay passed away? Out in Nebraska or something?
Yes, he was visiting one of his daughters. I think Minneapolis and Nebraska, visiting his daughter Ruth, I believe. One of the daughters, Anna, is married to a Lutheran pastor down in they're located in East Greenwich, Rhode Island. And Anna loved to come to church, and she used to sit in the front row. She was the youngest, and Mrs. LeMay played the organ, and she used to sit there. And the hymnal she had in the lap was as big as she was. She was a little bit of a thing, but I spoke to her on our 30th anniversary, and she told me that they had been up by here to the synod meeting and had come by the church so she could show it to her husband. But they were a lovely family. The girls were just as nice as could be. Mrs. LeMay, too.
Okay, does anybody have any questions of just out of curiosity? I know that Cleo Levendahl is a charter member.
Elizabeth Thompson.
And Mansell. And
family.
The lady that I just visited over in Kittery. May Pearson and her husband Nelson. Are there any other charter members that you can think of that are still in the area, still actively involved?
We've lost quite a few. The Whitlocks were almost practically charter members.
That's right, Virginia.
They came just a few weeks after we had closed the charter membership list, so we always thought of them as charter members.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, well, thank you very much, Harold and Marie, for sharing your your thoughts with us and
Pictures here I'm gonna
for
show.
the
This is how the congregation looked the day we became a congregation over at the school and went with